Hey guys, tonight we slip into a universe older than time, where the sky was silent, the sea still, and not even the concept of before existed. You're floating in absolute nothingness, no light, no shape, no thought. Just chaos. Not chaos like Laundry Day, but chaos with a capital C, the Greek mythological void. A great yawning absence where you can't even stub your toe because, well, toes haven't been invented yet. And then something stirs. Out of this void, the first beings emerge, not born like you and I, but suddenly are. First comes Gaia, the earth herself, wide-hipped and patient. Then Tartarus, the gloomy depths beneath her. Then Eros, yes, that Eros, the god of attraction, and possibly the first recorded excuse for people doing reckless things. Erebus, the darkness, and Nyx, the night, drift in next. It's a family reunion if your family was entirely abstract and cosmic. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Always fascinating to see how insomnia unites us all. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to a strange living world. Gaia, Earth, is already stretching out her forests and seas like she's rearranging furniture. She gives birth to Uranus, the sky, and they do what mythological couples do best: produce a dozen titans, 3 cyclopes, and 3 hecaton shares. The last group? Think of them as living natural disasters. Each has 100 hands and 50 heads. Imagine trying to hug one. Uranus, the first absentee father, is not thrilled with his chaotic offspring. He locks the monstrous ones away deep in Gaia's belly. Gaia is displeased. Mothers do not appreciate their children being shoved into the basement, even if those children scream in 50 voices and knock over mountains. So she fashions a sickle out of flint and hands it to her youngest titan, Cronus. No pressure, kid. Just overthrow your own dad. Cronus waits for Uranus to lean down for a nighttime cuddle, and then swipe. He castrates him with the sickle. The blood falls onto the earth, birthing furies and giants, and the severed bits fall into the sea, where they foam. From this divine sea foam emerges Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, who proves once and for all that beauty can apparently come from trauma. Historians still argue whether this myth was a poetic metaphor for generational change, natural cycles, or just ancient Greeks being very comfortable with graphic allegory. Either way, Cronus becomes the new ruler of everything. But let's just say karma's got his number. Cronus marries his sister Rhea because, mythology, and they start having kids. But Cronus, having seen what happened to his dad, decides he's not taking chances. Every time Rhea gives birth, he swallows the baby whole. No bib, no chewing, just down the hatch. That's Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, all chilling inside Dad's belly, probably not thrilled about their real estate. Now, Rhea's not stupid. When she gets pregnant with baby number 6, she swaps the infant for a rock wrapped in a blanket. Cronus, clearly not a fan of taste testing, gulps it down with zero suspicion. She hides the real baby, Zeus, in a cave on Crete, where he's nursed by a goat named Amalthea and guarded by warriors who bang their shields to drown out his cries. That's right. Zeus, future king of gods, grows up as a cave baby surrounded by loud, protective uncles and one deeply overworked goat. Fun side note, some versions of the myth say bees brought him honey, which, if true, makes him the most pampered mountain infant in prehistory. Meanwhile, Cronus is strutting around like he's won the divine lottery, not realizing that his digestive decisions are about to come back to haunt him. As Zeus grows older, fed on milk and honey and chaos, he starts to plot. Not revenge, exactly, more like a family reunion with an exit strategy. He consults with Gaia, his grandmother. Yes, Greek genealogy is like a tangled necklace, and gets a potion to feed Cronus. The moment Cronus drinks it, he pukes up 5 fully grown gods and goddesses, slimy, probably annoyed, and very ready to talk about their childhood trauma. And just like that, the stage is set. The Olympians are reunited. Cronus is in serious trouble, and the world is about to go through its most epic custody battle yet. Before you drift further into this tale, just imagine, You're lying there beneath a starless sky, the ground humming beneath you as primal forces gather for war. The air is thick, heavy, like it's holding its breath. Somewhere in the dark, the hundred-handed ones are stirring, shaking mountains with each step. You've only just met the gods, and already, they've made quite the entrance. Oh, and just a cheeky reminder, if you ever feel like your family is complicated, remember that these people swallowed each other and turned sea foam into a goddess. You're doing fine. You're standing on the edge of time, boots dusty with myth as thunder rumbles across the sky and something ancient prepares to fall. Cronus, king of the Titans, is pacing now. His kids are free, his stomach's a mess, and his reign is suddenly shaky at best. You'd feel sorry for him if he hadn't literally swallowed his children. But power never lets go quietly. The Titans aren't all bad. Some are cosmic embodiments. Themis, goddess of divine law, Oceanus with his endless rivers, Mnemosyne, who governs memory. But Cronus? He's about to become that guy at the party who overstays his welcome, then flips a table on the way out. Zeus, now free and flexing those thunder-wielding muscles, rallies his siblings. The original 5 plus himself, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, aren't just out to dethrone Dad. They want a new world order. One with thrones, palaces, power sharing, and fewer babies being eaten. This leads to the Titanomachy, which is just a fancy word for 10 years of screaming, boulders, and cosmic therapy needs. You're there now, crouched behind a craggy rock on Mount Othrys, trying not to get crushed by flying trees. The war is relentless. The Titans, powerful but old school, hurl mountains like dodgeballs. The Olympians, younger and craftier, strike back with thunder, storms, and divine shade. It's loud, messy, and oddly personal. Fringe fact: some ancient vases depict the battle like a chaotic rave. Gods mid-leap, Titans cringing dramatically, and Zeus doing a full power pose with lightning like it's a fashion shoot. But the war doesn't budge until Zeus remembers the relatives locked in Tartarus. Yep, those hundred-handed Hecon shares and single-eyed Cyclopes, still imprisoned from the last generation's family drama. Zeus, ever the strategist, descends into the underworld and cuts a deal. He frees the Hecatonchires, who are basically walking siege weapons, and the Cyclopes, who are grateful enough to gift Zeus thunder and lightning, Poseidon his trident, and Hades a helmet of invisibility. Yes, invisibility. Hades becomes the ancient world's first stealth character, sneaking through enemy lines like it's a divine heist. With their new toys and terrifying allies, the Olympians push hard. The sky cracks, the earth moans. Historians still argue whether this reflects an actual memory of natural disasters, volcanoes, floods, or just poetic metaphor for the violent birth of order from chaos. You just know you're ducking behind boulders, hoping no one sees you, and wondering if it's normal for the ground to bleed. Eventually, Cronus is defeated, tackled by a trio of hundred-armed brothers while Zeus hurls lightning from above. The Titans are chained and exiled to Tartarus, guarded by their monstrous jailers. Not all Titans are punished, though. Oceanus, Helios, and a few others get to keep their cosmic jobs. It's not personal, it's just politics. And now, Zeus and the gang move into their new mountaintop condo, Mount Olympus. Think marble columns, eternal feasts, and gods who never age, but also passive-aggressive feuds that last for centuries. Because let's face it, immortality doesn't guarantee emotional maturity. Zeus is crowned king of gods. Poseidon gets the sea. Hades takes the underworld, which sounds grim, but honestly, it's quiet, organized, and no one's throwing thunderbolts. A win for introverts everywhere. But there's no perfect ending. Gaia is furious that her children, again, were imprisoned. So, she births one more monster, Typhon. Now picture this, a creature taller than mountains, with 100 dragon heads, and a voice that mimics every animal at once. You stare up into that storm of teeth and wings, wondering if this is the part where you should run, or just lie down and accept your fate. Typhon rampages across Greece. Mountains catch fire, rivers run backward. The gods, shockingly, panic and flee to Egypt. No joke, they transform into animals to hide. Zeus becomes a ram, Apollo a crow, Dionysus a goat. You've never seen so many confused deities buying their way through panic. But eventually Zeus remembers he's Zeus. He turns, hurls thunder like it's on sale, and traps Typhon beneath Mount Etna. And yes, that's why the volcano still rumbles today. Typhon's still fuming, somewhere deep below. The world settles, smoke clears, the sky stops twitching, and Olympus is safe, for now. As you lie back against the clouds and look down on a newborn divine world, you notice something odd. These gods, these shining immortal beings, they're already squabbling. Who gets invited to feasts? Who gets to marry whom? Who deserves more offerings from mortals? Because here's the secret no myth ever says out loud. Power isn't peaceful, even when you win. And just when you think things might calm down, you hear a whisper from below. One that promises fire, betrayal, and one very bad day for Zeus. But that's a story for next time. You wake up in the golden light of dawn on Mount Olympus. The clouds are soft under your elbows, and the smell of ambrosia is in the air. Whatever ambrosia is, it somehow smells like warm bread, citrus, and a whisper of eternity. The war is over. The Titans are locked away. And Zeus? Zeus is throwing parties. He struts across the heavens like a divine CEO who just merged with the universe and now thinks he invented time. You can almost hear the thunder in his footsteps, not because there's a storm, but because he is the storm. He's crowned himself king of the gods. Sky, thunder, law, order, all under his jurisdiction. But don't let the divine glow fool you. This guy has trust issues and a flair for melodrama. He divides the universe like a hike's real estate deal. Poseidon gets the sea, Hades the underworld, and he keeps the sky, and honestly everything else for himself. The earth? Shared, like divorced parents splitting custody, except with earthquakes. The brothers don't argue, not openly, but you sense it, that subtle tension. The occasional side-eye from Poseidon, the quiet smolder in Hades' gaze. These aren't just gods, they're siblings, which means someone's feelings are always going to get trampled. Still, Olympus is alive now, a city above the clouds, gleaming with columns and echoing with divine footsteps. You walk past Hera's throne, carved from gold and loyalty, past Aphrodite's ever-blooming garden, and into the chamber where Hephaestus, yes, the god of blacksmithing, pounds out weapons so hot they steam even in godly air. Hephaestus is limping, that's his signature. According to one myth, Zeus once threw him off Olympus for taking Hera's side. He fell for an entire day before crash-landing in Lemnos. Did he hold a grudge? Of course. But he turned that rage into the greatest forge in existence. You can smell the iron and resentment. Meanwhile, Hermes zips around in winged sandals, delivering messages, stealing cows, and being the original ADHD poster child. Artemis haunts the woods with silver arrows, eyes sharp as moonlight. Apollo plays his lyre in golden sunbeams while occasionally threatening to smite someone for poor taste in music. And then there's Ares. You know that one guy at a party who's always ready to fight someone over pool rules? That's Ares. God of war, bloodlust, and bruised egos. He flexes before every battle like he's posing for a celestial magazine. The other gods roll their eyes, but mortals? Mortals build statues. Still, even on Mount Olympus, perfection is an illusion. You begin to notice it, cracks in the marble, whispers in the halls. For one, Zeus is a disaster when it comes to relationships. His marriage to Hera is the stuff of divine tabloids. She's the goddess of marriage, loyalty, and vengeance. He's, well, not loyal. Zeus has a habit of transforming into anything, swans, bulls, golden rain, yes really, just to pursue mortal women. The stories are mythic, bizarre, and deeply awkward if you picture it too clearly. Hera, of course, notices, and she doesn't take betrayal lightly. You hear her voice one night, low and sharp like ice cracking. He may be king of gods, but he is not above me. You keep walking, slowly, quietly, no eye contact. Historians still argue whether Hera was meant to be a symbol of jealous rage or divine justice. The myths don't clarify. But you know this. Hera doesn't forget. She bides her time. And when the punishment lands, it's usually symbolic and permanent. Ask Io, who ended up a cow for reasons you probably don't want to explain to your kids. Even the Olympians are unsure where they stand with one another. Athena, born fully armored from Zeus's forehead, because why not, sides with reason over emotion. She doesn't care for Dionysus's drunken epiphanies or Aphrodite's glittering charm, but she loves strategy, city planning, war, but the chess kind, not Ares's punch everyone and see thing. Then there's Hestia, goddess of the hearth, who keeps the peace by quietly lighting fires and staying out of it. Literally. She gave up her throne to avoid drama and tend to sacred flames. You watch her move through Olympus like a soft breeze, always calm, always kind. Honestly, you'd follow her to the ends of the earth just to rest in her warmth. But the gods are restless. They're immortal. But they're bored. And boredom in gods leads to drama on earth. Zeus starts messing with fate again, and not just romantically. He strikes down mortals for arrogance, rewards others for piety, and occasionally drops storms just because someone forgot to offer a goat. The divine mood is temperamental. And then comes the mortal problem. Humans are multiplying, building cities, making sacrifices, but they're also thinking, questioning, and worshipping the wrong gods at times, which annoys the Olympians deeply. So the gods intervene. Constantly, they disguise themselves, meddle in mortal love lives, start wars and others, and sometimes turn people into trees. Quirky fact? There's a myth where Apollo chases the nymph Daphne. She prays to escape, and boom, she turns into a laurel tree. Apollo still wears her leaves on his head. You wonder if that counts as closure. As you lie back on a floating cloud with your fingers tucked behind your head, you start to see the rhythm of Olympus. It's not about peace. It's about balance. Power is fragile. Ego is louder than thunder. And divinity, it's often petty, dramatic, and suspiciously human. The gods mirror us, our flaws, our rage, our longings, only louder, shinier, and immortal. They don't teach morality, they reflect it, and you're only 3 sections in. You're still stretched out on that Olympus cloud, but the calm is deceptive. The gossip swirls faster than Hermes in a tailwind. Because now that the gods are comfortably perched in the sky, they've moved on to their next favorite activity, acting like deeply flawed celebrities with unlimited power. Welcome to the golden age of divine dysfunction. You drift through Zeus's halls as he hosts another banquet, the kind where everyone's smiling, but someone's going to cry into their ambrosia by the end. The gods recline on marble couches, sipping nectar, toying with golden fruit, and side-eyeing each other with the subtlety of an ancient soap opera. Zeus is holding court, thundering about justice and fate while giving very selective attention to whichever nymph is closest. Hera sits beside him with a smile so thin it could slice bronze. She laughs at his jokes on a delay, and you feel it in your bones. This is not going to end well. Tonight's topic of tension? Mortals. Again, someone dared to compare themselves to the gods. Always a bad move. Arachne, a mortal woman in Lydia, becomes famous for her weaving. The girl is good, like Olympic-level embroidery, but she makes the fatal mistake of saying she's better than Athena. Not close to, not almost as good, just flat-out better. You already feel your stomach drop. Athena descends in disguise, offering Arachne a chance to walk it back. But Arachne doubles down, so they weave, side by side. Looms clacking like war drums. Arachne's tapestry? A masterpiece. Possibly better than Athena's. And worse, it mocks the gods, shows their scandals, their betrayals. Basically a woven call-out post. Athena snaps. She tears the tapestry apart, strikes Arachne down, and then, perhaps out of guilt or strange admiration, transforms her into the first spider. To weave forever. So next time you brush away a web from your porch, know that a very opinionated weaver might be living her eternal punishment. You wander the halls again and pass Apollo, radiant as always, who's in the middle of another heartbreak. He's fallen for Daphne, again. Remember her? The one who became a tree? He still visits, still wears laurel, still sighs like a teenager. He's not alone. The gods keep tangling with mortals like it's a sport. Narcissus, for instance, turns down a nymph named Echo, who can only repeat what others say, so thoroughly that she fades into just a voice. Narcissus then falls in love with his own reflection in a pond, stares so long he either dies of thirst or turns into a flower. Historians still debate whether this tale is about beauty, vanity, or just really poor dating decisions. Meanwhile, Dionysus is doing Dionysus things. wandering the earth with his band of ecstatic followers called Maenads. Picture wild-eyed women in ivy crowns, dancing barefoot through forests and occasionally ripping apart livestock with their bare hands. Casual. Dionysus is the god of wine, madness, and that one party friend who shows up with a tambourine and 4 emotional breakdowns. You spend a night at one of his festivals. There's laughter, trance-like dancing, and the kind of hazy joy that tips into terror if you stay too long. The line between ecstasy and chaos is razor thin. And with Dionysus, it's always moving. By dawn, you're stumbling away from the torchlit grove with laurel in your hair, trying to forget that someone may or may not have turned into a grapevine. Then there's Artemis, goddess of the hunt, who's deeply uninterested in men, or praise for that matter. One day, a hunter named Actaeon accidentally stumbles upon her bathing in a sacred spring. He's stunned, she's furious, and in a blink, he's transformed into a stag. His own hunting dogs tear him apart, confused and wild. You tell yourself it's a warning about respecting boundaries. You also make a note to avoid any sacred springs, ever. You sit with Athena later, watching her sharpen her spear while reading ancient law scrolls. She's the closest thing Olympus has to logic and reason. But even she isn't immune to divine missteps. There's Medusa, after all. Now here's the version no one paints on vases. Medusa was once a beautiful maiden, a priestess in Athena's temple. She caught Poseidon's eye, and not in a good way. Depending on the version, she's seduced or assaulted in the temple itself. Athena, enraged, not at Poseidon, but at Medusa, transforms her into a gorgon. Snake hair, petrifying gaze, eternal exile. Because the gods, like the weather, don't always strike where they should. Quirky detail? Some Roman poets later tried to soften this tale, saying Athena gave Medusa the power to protect herself. But that feels a little like saying a lightning strike was a friendly nudge. Still, Athena keeps the Gorgon's head after Perseus slays her, places it on her shield, the Aegis, as both weapon and symbol. Power and guilt braided together. As you step outside the palace again, night has fallen over Olympus. The stars are sharp and cold. You peer down at the mortal world and feel the buzz of divine meddling in every whisper of wind. The gods are active, restless. Each mortal love affair, each storm, each cursed family, it all ties back to them. Because while mortals pray for guidance, the gods, they mostly just want attention. One last tale before you drift too far tonight. Niobe, a queen who had many children and dared to boast that she was more deserving of worship than Leto, the mother of Apollo and Artemis. Leto, calm and quiet, doesn't reply. She just sends her kids. Apollo slays Niobe's sons. Artemis slays her daughters. Some say one child is spared, others say none. Niobe flees, broken, to Mount Sipylus, where she turns to stone, still weeping. To this day, locals say the mountain cries when it rains. Historians still argue whether this myth was moral lesson or cosmic bullying. But from your place on Olympus, it's clear. The gods don't forget slights, and they never let mortals forget who holds the thunder. You sink back into the cloud, tired of glowing halls and glowing tempers. The stars above you are silent, but the world below is stirring. More heroes are being born, more trouble brewing. The gods, for all their immortality, are only just getting started, and so are you. You wake to a sharp chill in the wind and the scent of scorched olive trees wafting up from the mortal world below. Olympus is quieter today. No banquets, no lyre music echoing off the marble halls. Just a heavy tension in the air, like the universe is holding its breath. You sit up on your cloud, ears straining. Then you hear it, the crackle of fire, not on Olympus, but down below, on Earth. That's when you realize someone has given humanity fire. You roll onto your stomach and peer through the clouds to see a figure on a mountain, wind whipping through his hair. Prometheus. The name comes to you like thunder. He's a titan, technically, one of the old gods who sided with Zeus during the Titanomachy. But he's not known for following orders. He's known for thinking for himself, and right now, he's breaking the rules. Prometheus is crouched beside a group of trembling mortals, showing them how to trap a flame inside dry wood, how to build hearths, how to cook meat and warm their shivering bodies. Their eyes are wide, glowing with something new, hope, power. a little bit of rebellion. You glance toward Olympus. Zeus is not going to like this. And sure enough, within moments, the clouds above you go dark. Not gently, not gradually, but like someone spilled ink across the heavens. A storm is coming, and it's wearing a crown. Zeus rages. Not because he hates humanity, well, not exactly, but because he fears them. Fire means independence. Tools, thought, civilization. And gods don't love sharing power with creatures who build their own futures. So he makes an example of Prometheus. Now you're watching the punishment unfold, and it's not pretty. Zeus has the Titan chained to a rock on the edge of the world, high in the Caucasus Mountains, where the wind slices skin like a blade and the sun burns without mercy. Each day an eagle comes, a massive, brutal bird with wings like night, and tears into Prometheus's liver. And each night it grows back. Pain, forever, looping, like divine clockwork. Quirky aside, ancient anatomists once believed the liver was the seat of human emotion and thought. So Prometheus's punishment wasn't just physical, it was philosophical. Every day, his essence was devoured. But here's the wild part. He never screams. You can feel the silence in your bones. He stares into the sky with fire still in his eyes, like he'd do it all over again just to see those humans warm themselves by their own flames. Zeus isn't done, though. If you thought liver-eating eagles were the end of his pettiness, oh no. He wants to punish humanity too. But not by taking fire back. That would be too clean, too easy. No, he wants them to suffer for having it. So he commissions a new creation. He calls on Hephaestus to mold her. Yes, her. From clay. The first woman. She's crafted with exquisite care. Aphrodite gives her beauty, Athena gives her charm and domestic skill, Hermes gives her a cunning tongue. But tucked beneath that golden glow, a gift from Zeus himself. Curiosity. Her name is Pandora, which roughly translates to all gifted. And yes, she comes with a box. Actually, it was originally a jar, but you know how stories change over time. In any case, the gods give her to Epimetheus, Prometheus's brother, as a bride. Prometheus had warned him, don't accept gifts from Zeus. But Epimetheus, sweet and soft, falls for her immediately. And one day, while Epimetheus is away, Pandora lifts the lid. Out spills everything. Disease, pain, envy, war, aging. All the miseries the gods had kept bottled up, now unleashed upon a defenseless world. The sky dims, rivers sicken, crops rot in the fields. Pandora slams the lid shut, but it's too late. Everything's gone, except one thing. At the very bottom of the jar, trembling and tiny, is pause. Even now, no one agrees on what that means. Was hope a final gift, a mercy, or just another curse, trapping people in endless longing? Historians still debate whether it was left behind for humanity or against them. But you here, floating just above it all, you're not thinking about metaphors. You're watching the first humans stumble across a blackened field, coughing from smoke, blinking in the sudden cold, and holding on to this invisible thread that says maybe tomorrow will be better. That's the fire Prometheus gave them. That's the hope Pandora couldn't quite lose. You lift your gaze to Olympus, where Zeus is back on his throne, satisfied but not smiling. Hera sits beside him, arms crossed. Hephaestus tends his forge in silence. And down below, the world has changed. Humans build cities now. They argue, create, destroy, rebuild. They whisper stories to each other around hearths lit by Prometheus's fire. And those stories? They start to sound familiar. Myths of gods and monsters, warnings and wonders. The gods gave them suffering, but the humans? They gave it meaning. Later, you stroll through the halls of Olympus again. There's a slight shift in the atmosphere. The gods watch the mortal world more closely now. Not just for amusement, but out of caution. Because these fragile creatures? They're learning too quickly. They invent tools. They ask questions. They write things down. One day, they might not need the gods at all. But for now, the stories continue. You press your hands to the cold marble railing, stare out at a world still steaming from divine punishment, and wonder. If you had the box in front of you, jar, box, whatever, would you open it? Would you dare let curiosity outweigh caution? And would you be strong enough to hold on to hope at the bottom? The wind whistles through Olympus like a warning, or maybe a lullaby. You're not sure. You lie back, hands behind your head, thinking about a man on a rock and a woman with a jar. about the fine line between gift and curse, and how every fire you've ever lit might have started with one act of defiance and one terrible choice. And yet, you're still here. Still warm. Still dreaming. The sky above you has grown softer now, tinged with gold. There's a lull in Olympus. No thunderbolts flying, no gods transforming into swans or golden rain for once. You stretch and roll over on your heavenly perch, letting the clouds cradle your limbs, because the world below is beginning to settle too. But don't get too comfortable, because the next part of this story isn't loud or dramatic. It's slow, creeping, sad, in a way that sinks into your chest. You're about to descend into the ages of man, and spoiler alert, it's not a happy arc. This story begins after Pandora's jar is opened and the world is flooded with suffering. And instead of stepping in to fix it, the gods decide to let things play out. What follows is a timeline of humanity according to Greek mythology, a poetic, somewhat judgmental version of history that unfolds in 5 ages. 5 chapters of decline, like a mythological 5-act tragedy. You land gently on a golden hillside. Birds chirp overhead. The trees shimmer. This is the Golden Age, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You live in harmony with the earth. Crops grow without effort. There's no war, no hunger, no jealousy. Just quiet days under the sun, peaceful dreams at night, and a kind of purity you didn't realize existed. The people don't grow old. They gently drift away when their time comes, like mist vanishing from morning fields. Zeus isn't in charge yet. Cronus, the old titan, rules in a more laid-back style. There are no temples, because no one needs them. No one prays, because nothing is lacking. It's the kind of existence that sounds suspiciously like early retirement with good weather and 0 emails. But golden things don't last. Eventually, the Golden Age ends, not with a bang, but with a shift. Cronus falls, Zeus rises, and the world turns to silver. And immediately, things get weird. In the Silver Age, humans start off as children. For a really long time, like 100 years long. They live at home, refusing to grow up, refusing to honor the gods, whining about everything. Then suddenly, boom, they age rapidly and die. No middle age, just eternal adolescence followed by a steep cliff. Zeus finds them annoying, disrespectful. And he doesn't do well with disrespect, so he wipes them out. No second chances. Silver ends not in shadow, but in silence. Then comes bronze. You feel it before you even see it, a hardening of the ground beneath your feet. The air smells like iron and ash. The Bronze Age is made of warriors, massive, terrifying, bronze-armored men who live only for combat. Their homes are made of bronze, their weapons, bronze. Their hearts, also bronze. They fight constantly, not for land, not even for glory, just because they can. Their existence is so brutal, even the gods keep their distance. Eventually they wipe themselves out. Just vanish into the dirt, buried beneath the weapons they once worshipped. No great tragedy, no godly punishment, just the natural end of a species that couldn't stop punching itself. You lie on your back again, heart a little heavy. But wait, there's another age, one last glimmer, the heroic age. And it's different. The heroic age is the only one the myths don't treat like a cautionary tale. It's the age of demigods, Hercules, Perseus, Achilles, Odysseus, people who do great, foolish, impossible things. The kind of figures who straddle the divine and the human, often suffering because of it. This is the age of stories, of quests and prophecies, of hubris and heartbreak. There are wars, oh so many wars, but also honor, love, even kindness occasionally. It's still tragic, yes, but it's beautiful too, and that beauty echoes. These are the myths that become immortal, not because the gods preserved them, but because humans retold them. Again and again. You pass through the heroic age like a shadow, brushing past Achilles as he sulks in his tent, watching Penelope unweave her tapestry at night, hearing Hercules grunt as he wrestles a lion the size of a small bus. These people don't know their myths, they just feel real. And finally you land, soft but hard, into the Iron Age. This is the present, the age the Greeks believed they were living in. And it's bleak. People lie, steal, betray each other. Families break, friends deceive. The earth no longer yields easily. Children are born into war, and justice? It's rare. Fragile, often crushed. Even hospitality, a sacred thing to the gods, is broken. You walk through a city made of stone and shadow. You hear voices bickering, doors slam, coins clink with greed, people work themselves to death and still go hungry. There are temples, sure, but many are empty. In the Iron Age, the gods retreat. Zeus, watching from above, decides to withhold immortality. To stop walking among men, the divine grows distant, mysterious, and the world becomes cold without it. But here's the curious thing. Even in the Iron Age, people hope. They still light fires, still pray to the sky, still tell stories of better days, of heroes, of gods, of love that survives even in war. And in a strange twist, this very suffering is what gives rise to something the gods didn't predict: philosophy. Reflection. Wisdom. Maybe that's the final irony. That in the age where everything is hardest, thinking is born. You lie on a rocky hilltop now, beneath a sky smeared with dusk. You think about the 5 ages, about how the past always seems brighter, about how even the ancients were nostalgic for their own imaginary history. Historians still debate whether these ages of man reflect an actual cycle of civilization or just the Greeks being poetic and cynical. But you? You're just watching the stars flicker on one by one and wondering which age you truly belong to, because deep down you feel it, that you've lived a little in all of them. Golden days of peace, silver days of apathy, bronze days of anger, heroic struggles, iron doubts, and somewhere inside you a spark, a fire, still burning. You wake to the scent of earth, sweet and rich, not the crisp clouds of Olympus, not the burning air of punishment, but something deeper, damp soil, wildflowers, and pomegranate. The kind of scent that clings to your skin and refuses to leave. You've landed in a different realm now, one that lies between life and death, warmth and winter. A place where the sun hesitates. A place ruled not just by gods, but by silence. This is the story of Persephone, and it begins in a field. She's the daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest, a bright, blooming girl whose laugh sounds like wind through tall grass. She dances among the crocuses and lilies, picking flowers and humming to herself, entirely unaware that the world is about to shift beneath her. Because far below, in the shadowy realm of the dead, someone is watching. Hades, lord of the underworld, sees her and is struck. Not with lust, not with lightning, but with a longing he doesn't understand. He's used to stillness, to cold, to bones and silence and echoes. But she's color and motion. She is spring incarnate. So he does what gods so often do when desire overwhelms them. He acts. The earth cracks open, a chasm yawns, and before she can scream, Persephone is pulled downward, petals scattering from her hands, the sunlight vanishing above her. You feel it in your chest, that sudden drop like a roller coaster with no safety bar. Demeter, her mother, searches the earth. Days pass, then weeks. She roams fields, forests, even Olympus, pleading with the gods. But no one speaks, no one dares. Eventually she learns the truth, and her grief is terrifying. Demeter stops everything. The crops die, trees wither, rivers dry. She withdraws her gifts from the world, and the planet enters its first true famine. Mortals starve, animals vanish, even the gods feel the loss. Zeus finally intervenes, not out of compassion but out of necessity. The balance is off. The earth, their shared dominion, is cracking. He sends Hermes, the swift-footed messenger, down into the underworld to negotiate. Hades doesn't argue, he's not cruel, but he is clever. Before Persephone leaves, he offers her a gift, a single pomegranate, juicy, red as blood, and she eats it. Just a few seeds, a snack, a gesture. But that's all it takes, because underworld rules are weird and ancient and binding. If you eat food from the realm of the dead, you're part of it. You belong. So a deal is struck. Persephone may return, but not for good. She'll spend part of the year above with her mother and part below with Hades. And thus the seasons are born. When Persephone rises, the earth rejoices. Flowers bloom, fields stretch, the sun lingers longer. Spring and summer unfold like a smile. But when she descends again, Demeter mourns. The leaves fall, the soil hardens, winter takes hold. It's a cycle, a rhythm, a grief that repeats. You walk the earth now, feeling it. The joy of Persephone's return, the hush of her absence. You see her footsteps in the frost, her laughter in the breeze. She is no longer just a girl picking flowers. She's a queen, the queen of death. the only one who moves freely between worlds. Historians still debate whether Persephone's myth is about agriculture, about the soul, or about a woman caught between identities, a maiden above, a monarch below. You just know she's not what you expected. In the underworld, she sits beside Hades, not as a victim, but as his equal. She passes judgment, offers mercy, guides the newly dead with steady hands. She's not scared anymore. There's a quiet power in her now. You visit her garden. Yes, even the land of the dead has one. It's not lush, not in the traditional sense, but the flowers here glow faintly, silver and violet, blooming only under moonlight. They smell of memory and ash. You kneel beside a black rose and feel a chill rise up your spine. These blossoms don't wilt. They remember. A quirky detail: ancient Greeks would place coins on the eyes of the dead so they could pay Charon, the ferryman of the Styx. But in some local tales, those who met Persephone's gaze needed no payment, just a truth. A single honest memory, because she, unlike the others, understands longing. Back above, Demeter works the soil again. She teaches humans to sow wheat, to harvest barley, to grind flour and bake bread. She is generous, yes, but never quite whole. Each year when Persephone returns to the underworld, Demeter falls quiet again. You can see it in the slant of autumn sun. You can taste it in the first frost on your tongue. It's strange how this one myth explains everything, from the tilt of the earth to the ache of missing someone. Persephone's tale isn't just about seasons, it's about change, about what happens when innocence is lost, when you descend, willingly or not, into the parts of life no one prepares you for. Grief, growth, the sharp ache of becoming more than you once were, and it's about return, because she does come back, every time. Not the same, not untouched, but stronger, wiser, full of stories she doesn't always share. You lie in the shadow of her myth now, watching the stars blink on overhead. Somewhere below, the dead whisper her name with reverence. Somewhere above, flowers stir in their sleep, waiting. You realize the world doesn't revolve around the sun alone. It revolves around Persephone, the girl who fell, the queen who rose, the rhythm of endings and beginnings. And as the cold creeps in again, you pull your blanket tighter and think, maybe your own seasons will shift too. Maybe your own descent, whatever it is, will make you gentler, stronger, someone who knows the way back up. Your dreams are soft now, full of whispers and golden light, but it doesn't last. You hear a grunt, then a roar, and now your blanket of clouds is rumbling beneath you, shaking like thunder wrapped in muscle. Because you're about to meet Heracles, or as you probably know him, Hercules, the strongman of Greek mythology, the lion slayer, monster wrestler, and one-man demolition crew who made tragedy look like a workout plan. But first, let's set the scene. You land on the edge of a dusty road, olive trees rustling in the wind, somewhere near Thebes. And there he is. Not yet a legend, just a baby. A baby with absurdly chunky arms, already swatting flies like they insulted his ancestors. His origin story? Buckle up. Zeus, ever the master of chaos, falls for a mortal woman named Alcmene. And instead of flirting like a normal god, he transforms into her husband. Yes, that's the level of trust issues we're dealing with. Heracles is born from this deception, a demigod, half human, half thunderbolt. Now Hera, Zeus's long-suffering and long-fuming wife, takes one look at this bouncing bundle of infidelity and decides she's going to make his life very difficult. Before he can even crawl, she sends 2 serpents to his crib. But Heracles? He strangles them. As a baby. Just picture a diaper-wearing toddler holding a snake in each hand like he's ringing a bell. Cute. Horrifying. Both. Still, he grows up strong. Unreasonably strong, but not always wise. He gets married, has children, seems happy. Until Hera strikes again, this time not with monsters, but with madness. For a brief, horrifying moment, Heracles loses his mind. And in that haze, he kills his wife and children. Silence. Even now, the myths falter when they get to this part. They stutter, skip, as if they, too, can't quite face what happened. When Heracles comes back to himself, the weight of it nearly crushes him. And so begins his penance. He seeks the Oracle of Delphi, and she gives him a brutal path. Serve King Eurystheus, his cowardly cousin, and complete 12 labors. 12 impossible tasks. One for each of the gods, though not all of them are helpful. Looking at you, Hera. Your first stop is Nemea. A lion is terrorizing the countryside, its skin too thick for swords or arrows. Heracles strangles it with his bare hands, then uses its own claws to skin it. He wears the hide like a hoodie afterward, complete with the lion's head as a hood. Functional and terrifying. Next, the Lernaean Hydra. A serpent with 9 heads. Every time he cuts one off, 2 grow back. So what does he do? Cauterizes the necks with a flaming torch. Because apparently monster combat requires multitasking. The list goes on, capturing the Ceryneian hind, chasing the Erymanthian boar, cleaning the Augean stables, in a single day, using a river because Heracles doesn't do brooms, slaying the Stymphalian birds, and taming the Cretan bull. By now, mortals speak his name in awe. The gods, in mixed tones of admiration and exhaustion. But the labors don't get easier. He has to steal the man-eating mares of Diomedes, snag the belt of Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons. That one ends badly. And herd the cattle of Geryon, who lives far beyond the known world. Then he's tasked with stealing the apples of the Hesperides. Golden, sacred, guarded by a 100-headed dragon and some very grumpy nymphs. This is where Heracles tricks Atlas, the titan doomed to hold up the sky. Heracles offers to take the sky for a moment. Atlas agrees, then tries to ditch him. But Heracles outwits him, asking Atlas to hold the sky just a second while he adjusts, and then dashing off with the apples. Flexing and finessing. Who knew? The final task? Capturing Cerberus, the 3-headed hound of the underworld. That's right, he has to go to the land of the dead. No sword, no armor, just raw strength and polite negotiation. Hades actually lets him try, on the condition that he doesn't use weapons. So Heracles wrestles Cerberus into submission and drags him, snarling and drooling, up into the world of the living, just long enough to show he can. Then he returns him, unharmed. Good dog. Quirky fact: some ancient vases show Heracles giving Cerberus a noogie. Historians still debate whether that's symbolic or just early fan art. But here's the thing about Heracles. For all his strength, he's not always kind. He's impulsive, violent. He loses friends, makes enemies, breaks things, sometimes hearts, sometimes cities. Even after his labors, his life is not peaceful. He remarries. Again and again, Hera finds a way to poison his joy. This time, literally. His wife, tricked by a dying centaur, gives him a shirt soaked in toxic blood, thinking it's a love charm. He puts it on. It burns into his flesh. Unremovable, unbearable. He builds a pyre, climbs onto it, lights it himself. And as the flames rise, Zeus intervenes, finally. The gods take what's left of him, lift it to Olympus, and grant him immortality. Not out of pity, but out of respect. Because Heracles, unlike so many others, finished his myth. He descended into madness, climbed out, took on impossible tasks, failed, succeeded, and still burned at the end, only to rise again. You walk through the stars now, and there he is, his constellation stretched across the night sky, muscles frozen in a pose of eternal struggle. You wonder what he thinks about, up there. Whether he still hears the echo of roars or the silence that came after. And then you think about your own labors. Not 12, maybe, but enough. Enough to know that strength doesn't come from how loud you fight, but from what you carry, and how long you're willing to keep going. You roll onto your side, clouds soft beneath your cheek, and catch a glimpse of tangled thread glinting in the sun. Not thread like a seamstress would use. This one is old, myth-worn, passed from one trembling hand to another, tied to fate, to beasts, to blood. It leads you now to a dark, echoing labyrinth. A place where walls shift and hope gets lost. A place where a boy with a sword and a secret tries to become something more than mortal. You're heading into the story of Theseus, and it begins with a ball of string. But like any good myth, his tale starts long before the labyrinth. Theseus is the son of Aegeus, king of Athens, or maybe Poseidon, or both. Greek myths tend to hedge their bets. Either way, he grows up away from the city, not knowing his royal identity. His mother hides a sword and sandals beneath a massive stone, telling him he'll be ready to find his father when he can lift it. And one day, he does. He sets off for Athens not by sea, like a normal person, but by the dangerous road route, because apparently the scenic path through monster-infested wilderness was part of the hero package. Along the way, he clears the path of bandits, giants, and one guy who fits travelers to a bed by either stretching them or cutting off limbs. You shudder. Theseus, however, just shrugs and moves on. By the time he reaches Athens, he's a local celebrity. But Athens is not doing well. Every 9 years, or possibly every year, myths disagree, the city is forced to send 7 boys and 7 girls to Crete as tribute, a sacrifice, to be fed to a monster. You already feel your pulse shift, because in the heart of Crete is a maze, and in the heart of that maze is the Minotaur, half man, half bull, all nightmare. Born from one of mythology's strangest scandals, a queen cursed by Poseidon to fall in love with a bull, who gives birth to a child too monstrous for the surface world. King Minos hides it away in a labyrinth designed by Daedalus, the greatest inventor of the age. The labyrinth is a trap. Once you enter, you do not find your way out, not without help. Theseus volunteers, not out of blind bravery, but strategy. If he kills the Minotaur, he ends the tribute, saves Athens, becomes a legend. You follow him to Crete, past the shining palace, the guards, the stairs, and that's where he meets Ariadne. She's King Minos's daughter, and she falls for Theseus fast. Not because he's charming, though he tries, but because he's the first person who looks at the maze and doesn't flinch. She gives him 2 things, a sword and a spool of thread. The sword is obvious. The thread, that's the trick. He'll tie one end at the entrance and unwind it as he walks, so when he slays the beast, he can find his way back out. Simple, clever, desperately hopeful. You're with him now, stepping into the labyrinth. The air is cold. Stone echoes underfoot. You hear the scrape of hooves in the dark, the slow, steady snort of something unnatural. And then you see it. The Minotaur isn't just a monster. It's tired. It's trapped. It charges anyway. The fight isn't long. The sword finds its mark. The thread pulls Theseus home. But nothing comes free in myth. Theseus flees with Ariadne. They sail away together. And just when you think this might actually be a rare happy ending, he strands her on an island while she sleeps. Historians still argue about this part. Did he do it deliberately? Was he ordered by the gods? Did Dionysus appear in a vision and claim her for himself? No one knows. But she wakes alone, and he sails on. And then Theseus forgets. Before he left, he promised his father, King Aegeus, that if he survived the labyrinth, he would raise white sails on his return. But in the chaos, or maybe guilt, he forgets. He sails into Athens with black sails still flying. Aegeus, watching from the cliffs, sees them, believes his son is dead, and leaps into the sea. That sea still bears his name, the Aegean. You sit there on the rocky cliffside, wind in your hair, and realize that heroism in Greek myth almost always comes with a price. A curse, a grief. Theseus returns a victor, but he's no longer a boy with a sword and a thread. He's a man who left love behind. A man who lost his father by forgetting to hope. Later, he becomes king. Tries to rule wisely. Fights in wars. Befriends Pirithous, who drags him into a wildly dumb plan to kidnap Persephone from the underworld. Spoiler, it fails. Spectacularly. They get stuck in chairs of forgetfulness for eternity, until Heracles shows up and rescues only one of them. Theseus dies not in battle, but betrayed. Pushed from a cliff by a rival king. Unceremonious, unpoetic, unfair. But his story endures. Not just because of what he did, but because of what he left behind. The myth of the labyrinth is more than just a tale of monsters and mazes. It's about choices, about courage in the dark, about following the thread when you don't know what waits at the center. You sit quietly now, letting the image of that twisting maze linger in your mind. You wonder what you'd do, faced with your own version. What string you'd hold on to, what beast you'd have to face to get back to the light. And somewhere in the distance you hear the faint rustle of thread being pulled across stone. You're standing on a creaking dock now, wooden planks warm beneath your feet, salty breeze brushing your face as ropes groan and sails ripple. Before you a sleek ship bobs in the tide, its hull carved with runes and sea serpents. Its name is whispered with awe, half fear, half prayer, the Argo. Because this is the tale of Jason, the Argonauts, and a golden prize that glitters far brighter than any future they deserve. Jason's story begins, like many Greek myths, with a stolen throne and a prophecy no one quite understands until it's far too late. His father, Aeson, was the rightful king of Iolcus, but his throne was usurped by a man named Peleus, who does what all good usurpers do, kills rivals, threatens heirs, and panics whenever a prophecy shows up. That prophecy? That a man wearing one sandal will be his downfall. So one day, Peleus sees exactly that. A young man, golden-haired and wild-eyed, striding into town with 1 foot bare. It's Jason, Aeson's son, returning from exile, and Peleus knows immediately. This is the problem the prophecy warned him about. But instead of killing Jason outright, Peleus smiles. "If you want the throne," he says smoothly, "go prove yourself. Fetch me the golden fleece." You can almost see the trap glinting behind his teeth. Because the golden fleece is no ordinary treasure. It hangs on an oak tree in the distant land of Colchis, guarded by a never-sleeping dragon. And oh, the tree? Sacred to Ares, god of war. So basically, go die. Politely. But Jason agrees. He assembles a team, the Argonauts, a who's who of ancient myth. Orpheus with his haunting music, Atalanta, the fierce huntress, Castor and Pollux, Zetes and Calais, the winged sons of the north wind, and yes, Heracles, at least for the early part of the journey. The Argo itself is built by Argus and blessed by Athena, with a magical talking prow that whispers warnings in the wind. Yes, the ship talks. And yes, it judges them. Constantly. You step aboard, the timbers creaking beneath you, and the sea opens wide. The journey is brutal. Not in the cinematic, stormy sky sort of way, but in the long, slow, Greek myth-level, strange sort of way. They fight harpies, filthy, screeching birdwomen who defile the food of an old blind king. They row through the clashing rocks, massive stone jaws that crush anything passing between them. At Orpheus's urging, they release a dove first. When the bird makes it through with only a feather clipped, they follow, rowing with everything they've got as the rocks crash together behind them. Eventually, after detours, deaths, and at least one island of aggressively unfriendly women, they reach Colchis. And now the real test begins. Because the golden fleece isn't just hanging out waiting for them. It's deep in a grove, guarded by a serpent the size of a temple. But Jason has a weapon more potent than swords. Medea. She's the daughter of King Aedes of Colchis, and she's complicated. A powerful sorceress, a priestess of Hecate, goddess of magic and crossroads, a woman cursed or fated, depending on your perspective, to fall for Jason the moment she sees him. You meet her at night, beneath a sickle moon, her fingers dipped in herbs and spells, her eyes sharp with longing and danger. She knows what Jason is, she knows this won't end well. But she helps him anyway. She gives him potions to survive Aeac's impossible trials, yoking fire-breathing bulls, sowing dragon's teeth that sprout into warriors, putting the sleepless dragon to sleep. And Jason? Jason succeeds. He steals the fleece. And Medea. They flee in the night, chased by her furious father. And here's where the story starts to darken, quickly. To slow their pursuers, Medea makes a choice. She kills her own brother, Absyrtus, chops him to pieces, and scatters the remains into the sea. Her father is forced to stop and collect them for proper burial. That buys time, but it costs something deeper. They return to Iolcus triumphant. Jason has the fleece. Medea, now his wife, uses her magic to trick Peleus's daughters into murdering him, believing they're rejuvenating him in a magical bath. The throne should be Jason's, but he's exiled. Again, so they flee to Corinth. Try to start over, try to pretend that they're just a normal couple with no blood on their hands and no curses hanging over their heads. But Jason? Jason gets ambitious. He decides to marry the princess of Corinth for power, for position, and discards Medea like a used spellbook. And if you know anything about Greek mythology, you know this is the part where everything goes very, very wrong. Medea is not passive. She sends the princess a gift, a robe soaked in poison. When the girl puts it on, it burns her alive. Her father tries to save her. He dies too. And then Medea, in her final act of scorched earth heartbreak, kills her own children. Not out of madness, not as punishment, but to leave Jason with nothing. She escapes in a chariot pulled by dragons. Yes, actual dragons. Because the gods may not interfere often, but when a woman like Medea decides she's done being betrayed, they assist. Jason is left alone. No throne, no wife, no children, no ship. The Argo rots in the harbor, a skeleton of memory. He spends the rest of his life in obscurity, and in one final twist of irony, he dies not in battle, not in glory, but crushed by a plank falling from the very ship that made him famous. Historians still argue whether Jason was a hero, a pawn, or a fool wrapped in gold leaf. Some say Medea was the villain, others that she was the only one who saw the truth. You sit now on the prow of the Argo's wreckage, listening to the creak of wood that remembers too much. You think about the fleece, shining somewhere far away, and all the lives ruined just to touch it. And you wonder, how many of your own quests were worth the cost? How many times have you chased something shining, only to realize it was never meant for you? You wake now in the hush of stone, cold, still. The air doesn't move here, not even to breathe. Your footsteps echo through a dim, temple-like chamber lined with old cracked statues, faces frozen in mid-scream. And at the far end, half hidden in shadow, she waits. Medusa. You've heard her name before, probably whispered like a warning or spat like a curse. She's become the shorthand for danger, for monstrousness, for a look that kills. But as you step closer now, your skin prickling, you realize the truth of her story is far more complex than the fear-soaked versions you've been told. She wasn't always a monster. Medusa began as a mortal woman. Beautiful, yes, but not vain, devoted even. She served as a priestess in the temple of Athena, sworn to chastity, to wisdom, to the cold clarity of marble and law. But the world, as you've learned by now, is not kind to beauty. Especially not in temples. Especially not when gods are watching. Poseidon, lord of the sea, saw her, desired her, and one day, depending on the version you read, either seduced or assaulted her, not in some shadowed alley, but in the temple itself. A sacred space, a holy vow broken. And what did Athena do? She didn't punish Poseidon. She punished Medusa. She transformed her. Hair turned to writhing serpents, skin hardened, gaze cursed to turn any living thing to stone. A once devoted priestess now banished to the edge of the known world, alone. Isolated, feared. Historians still argue whether Athena's curse was wrath or protection. Did she shame Medusa or arm her with a weapon to ensure it never happened again? You sit beside her now, not turning your head. You know better. She's not angry, not exactly, but she is exhausted. Imagine being punished for surviving. Imagine having your sorrow turned into someone else's myth. And yet, her story doesn't end in exile. It ends with Perseus. He's a hero, but the kind that arrives because kings make impossible demands. His mother, Danae, had drawn the attention of another unwanted god, Zeus, who visited her as a golden rain. Yes, you read that correctly, and fathered a child. When King Polydectes wanted to marry Danae, Perseus objected. So the king, wanting to get rid of him, sent him on a noble quest, bring back the head of Medusa. Easy, right? Go kill the woman whose gaze can turn you to stone. But Perseus is clever, and he's not alone. Athena and Hermes aid him, offering gifts. A polished shield to see Medusa without looking at her directly. A curved blade, winged sandals, and Hades' helm of invisibility. Oh, and he also borrows a magical satchel to carry her head, because logistics matter. To find Medusa, Perseus first must visit the Graeae, 3 ancient sisters who share a single eye and a single tooth between them. Picture a trio of grandmothers, bickering and blind, handing an eyeball back and forth like a teacup. Perseus steals their eye mid-passing and only gives it back when they reveal the Gorgon's location. Now armed and informed, he flies to the edge of the world. You're with him now as he steps into the lair, slimy, dark, filled with statues that used to breathe. He doesn't look, just uses the shield, the shimmer of the reflection guiding his blade. And then he does it. With one clean motion, he severs Medusa's head. But even in death, she's not done. From her blood springs Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a golden warrior. Because Medusa wasn't just cursed, she was pregnant by Poseidon. Her death births legends. Even now, that part's barely mentioned. You wonder why. Perseus stuffs the head into his satchel, careful not to meet its gaze even in death, and flees, pursued by Medusa's vengeful sisters, the other Gorgons, who scream across the sky with a rage that could split mountains. Later, he'll use the head as a weapon, He'll turn a sea monster to stone to save Andromeda, the princess chained to a rock. He'll return to the court of Polydectes and do the same to the cruel king. One look, and stone. Eventually he'll give the head to Athena, who places it on her aegis. Her shield. A warning. A weapon. A symbol. You wonder, does it hurt less being remembered like that? Or is it just another way to erase who she used to be? You sit quietly with this. Because Medusa is more than a monster. She is a mirror. She reflects every woman ever punished for being seen. Every survivor turned into a threat. Every time sorrow became fear, and fear became myth. And somehow, even in silence, she endures. You step outside now, blinking against the morning light. The world is softer. You look around at the trees, the sky, the distant sea, and for just a moment, you almost understand what it must have felt like to once be human. To lose that. To be rewritten as danger. And you think about Perseus, flying off with his trophies. You think about the stories we tell, and who gets to survive them. You wake now to the sound of drums. Not celebratory, not rhythmic, more like thunder echoing off bronze. A different kind of music. War music. You sit up on a sandy plain, the wind dry and sharp with salt from the sea, and you know where you are. You can smell it in the air, thick with sweat and prophecy. You've arrived at the shores of Troy. And oh, you already know where this one is going. Even if you've only ever caught fragments. Achilles' heel, the face that launched 1,000 ships, a wooden horse that wasn't just a horse. You know this isn't just a myth. It's a war story. But deeper than that, it's a human story. Flawed, cruel, brilliant, long. It starts with an apple. You laugh at how small it seems, this golden apple, tossed by Eris, goddess of discord, during a divine wedding party she wasn't invited to. She writes 3 words on it, to the fairest, and then tosses it into the crowd like a grenade. Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite all lunge for it. Zeus, wisely refusing to play judge, delegates the task to a mortal. Paris, Prince of Troy. He's young, handsome, herding sheep on a mountain because that's what exiled royalty does in myths. The 3 goddesses visit him, disguised first and then full glory. Each offers him a bribe. Hera promises power, kingship over all men. Athena offers wisdom and victory in war. Aphrodite, she offers the most beautiful woman in the world. And Paris, being human, chooses love. Or maybe lust. That woman is Helen, queen of Sparta. Problem is, she's already married to Menelaus, a king. And so when Paris visits Sparta and either seduces or abducts her, again, depending on who's telling the tale, the world tilts. Menelaus calls in a favor. You see, all of Helen's former suitors had once sworn an oath to protect her marriage, no matter who won her hand. That oath? It binds kings and warriors alike. So begins the call to war. The Greeks rally a massive force, 1,000 ships, heroes and kings and warriors wrapped in bronze. Agamemnon, Menelaus's brother, becomes commander. Odysseus is dragged from his farm. Achilles, the greatest warrior of all, joins, though not happily. He knows what's coming. His mother, the sea nymph Thetis, told him, "Go to Troy, and your name will live forever, but you won't." You're with them now, watching the sails stretch into the wind, the hulls slicing through waves like knives. They land on the shores of Troy, and for 10 years they fight. Not non-stop. These aren't video game battles. There are feasts, truces, betrayals, long speeches, love affairs, petty insults that become duels. Achilles and Agamemnon argue like siblings in a family drama. When Agamemnon seizes Achilles' war prize, a captured woman named Briseis, Achilles refuses to fight, and without him, the Greeks falter. The Trojans have heroes too. Hector, Prince of Troy, is noble, strong, deeply human. He fights not for glory, but for his family, his city, his newborn son. You see him kiss the child goodbye, knowing he won't live to see him grow up. The gods? They pick sides, obviously. Athena and Hera back the Greeks. Aphrodite supports the Trojans. Her favorite son is Paris, after all. Apollo joins her, hurling plague and prophecy. Zeus, as usual, tries to stay neutral, until he doesn't. You watch it unfold like theater soaked in blood. Paris and Menelaus duel. Hector slays Patroclus, Achilles' closest companion, who wears his armor into battle. Achilles, enraged beyond reason, returns to the fight, slaughters Hector, and drags his body around the city walls for days. Even the gods look away. Eventually, old King Priam, Hector's father, sneaks into the Greek camp at night to beg for his son's body. Achilles, touched by the king's grief, weeps and returns it. For a moment the war stops, just long enough for funeral pyres. But the end comes, as you knew it would, with a trick. Odysseus devises the scheme, a giant wooden horse left as a gift. The Greeks pretend to sail away, leaving the horse as a tribute to Athena. The Trojans debate, should they destroy it, burn it, leave it? They choose to bring it inside. At night, the warriors hidden inside the horse climb out, open the gates, and Troy falls. Fire, screams, smoke. No heroism now, just survival. Priam is killed at the altar. Women are taken as spoils. Cassandra, cursed to see the future but never be believed, had warned them all. No one listened. Helen is reclaimed or returns willingly. It's unclear. Paris is dead. Hector's son is thrown from the city walls to prevent vengeance. The war ends not with peace, but with emptiness. You stand in the ashes now, and for once, the gods are silent. You wonder if they regret what they caused, or if they're already watching the next story unfold. Achilles? He doesn't survive. Shot in the heel. The one vulnerable spot his mother couldn't protect when she dipped him into the river Styx. His name lives on, just like the prophecy promised. But no one ever mentions how tired he must have been. You sit beside a ruined wall, wind tugging at your clothes, and you can almost hear the whisper of the Trojan women asking, was she worth it? Was Helen really worth all of this? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe it was never about Helen at all. Maybe it was about ego, about honor, about oaths spoken before they could be understood. Maybe it was about fate, how once you step onto a path it pulls you like gravity even if you try to turn around. Historians still debate whether Troy was real, whether there was an actual war, whether a wooden horse was literal or poetic. But the truth is, the myth is more powerful than any single fact. Because Troy isn't just a place on a map, it's a symbol of what will burn and betray and break just to say we won. You lie back on the sand, stars flickering above, and realize the war is over. But the story, it's only halfway told. You open your eyes and everything is water. Not drowning, but drifting. Salt and sky blur together in waves that rise and fall like the breath of something ancient. You're clinging to driftwood now, sails shredded behind you, the shore a memory. Because the Trojan War may be over, but for one man, the journey home has only just begun. This is the story of Odysseus. You probably know him by reputation. The clever one, the trickster, the man of many minds, the one who built the horse and broke the war, but somehow can't find his way back to Ithaca. It should have taken weeks, maybe months if the winds were bad. Instead, it takes 10 years, because the gods apparently aren't ready to let him go. You drift beside his ship as it creaks toward home, crew weathered and sunburned, Odysseus at the helm with eyes that haven't rested in a decade. He's clever, yes, but not cautious. And in myth, cleverness often invites punishment. Their first major stop is the land of the Lotus Eaters. A place so dreamlike, so sweet, the men who taste the fruit forget everything. Their names, their homes, their families. Odysseus drags them back to the ship by force, tears on their faces, minds still fogged with honeyed lies. You know the feeling, the temptation to just let go, forget, float. But he presses on. Then comes the Cyclops. You know this one. Polyphemus, the giant with one eye, lives in a cave stacked with sheep and skulls. Odysseus and his crew trapped inside have to find a way out. So what does he do? He gets the Cyclops drunk, tells him his name is Nobody, and then drives a sharpened stake into his single eye while he sleeps. As the blind monster stumbles around screaming, "Nobody hurt me," the others don't come to help. Brilliant. Brutal. But as they sail away, Odysseus makes a mistake. He yells his real name back to shore. And Polyphemus, bleeding and raging, calls to his father, Poseidon, which is how Odysseus earns the undying hatred of the god of the sea. The ocean churns, the winds rebel, the journey becomes a nightmare. Next stop, Aeolus, keeper of the winds, gives Odysseus a bag containing all the winds, except the one that will take him home. He ties it shut, tells no one. They get within sight of Ithaca. Odysseus is asleep. His men, curious and suspicious, open the bag. The winds scream out. and they're blown all the way back to where they started. You wince, not because you're surprised, but because you've been there, so close to home, only to be undone by someone else's panic. Then they land on the island of the Laestrygonians, cannibal giants. Most of the fleet is lost. Odysseus keeps sailing, fewer now, spirits frayed like sailcloth. And then, Circe. She's a witch, a goddess, a sorceress who lives in a palace surrounded by lions and wolves, not attacking yet, but lounging, tame, enchanted. She turns Odysseus's men into pigs, actual pigs, squealing and terrified. Odysseus, with help from Hermes, resists her spell. They strike a deal. She restores the men, and then he stays, for a year, wrapped in her magic, her bedsheets, her island of false peace. You walk through her halls at night, watching the men eat and drink and forget. Not like the Lotus Eaters, more like surrender. Eventually, he remembers who he is. Circe tells him, to get home, he must go to the underworld. Yes, again, another descent. So he sails to the edge of the world, digs a trench, offers blood to the dead, and they come. Tiresias, the blind prophet, tells him how to make it home. Anticlea, his mother, appears. He hadn't known she died. Her voice breaks him. He sees Achilles, who tells him something chilling. I'd rather be a slave on earth than a king among the dead. He leaves changed. He sails on. Past the sirens, whose voices promise everything. Wisdom, peace, secrets. He fills his crew's ears with wax, ties himself to the mast, listens, and nearly loses his mind. Through Scylla and Charybdis, a six-headed monster on one side, a whirlpool on the other. He chooses Scylla, loses 6 men, keeps the ship afloat. He lands on the island of Helios, the sun god. They're starving. The crew is warned, do not eat the sacred cattle. But hunger is louder than warnings. They kill one. And when they set sail again, Zeus destroys the ship with a lightning bolt. Only Odysseus survives. He washes ashore on the island of Calypso, a nymph who offers him immortality, safety, love. He stays for 7 years, not because he wants to, but because sometimes grief paralyzes you. Sometimes you don't leave even when the door is open. Eventually, the gods intervene. Hermes again. A raft is built. Poseidon tries one last time to drown him, but he survives. He washes up in Phaeacia, tells his story, weeping. They send him home, Ithaca, finally. But even now, peace doesn't come easy. His home is overrun with suitors, men who believe he's dead, courting his wife Penelope, who's been weaving a burial shroud by day and unraveling it by night. For 10 years she has waited, lied, hoped. Odysseus returns disguised as a beggar. He watches, he waits. And then he strikes. With his son Telemachus beside him, he slaughters the suitors, arrows, blades, justice. But when he reveals himself to Penelope, she doesn't leap into his arms, she tests him, asks a question only the real Odysseus would know. And when he answers, she believes. The reunion isn't loud. It isn't a cinematic kiss. It's 2 people hollowed by time, choosing to believe again. You sit in the silence of that moment, heart aching. Because this wasn't just a journey of miles, it was a journey of self. Odysseus left as a hero. He returned as a man, tired, changed, scarred. And yet, home. Historians still argue whether the Odyssey is an adventure tale or a metaphor for PTSD, for exile, for longing. But for you, it's the story of what happens after the victory. Because war is loud. But coming home, that's the hard part. You lie back now, waves lapping at your ankles, and whisper his name to the stars. Not because you want to follow in his footsteps, but because you know what it means to be lost, and what it means to keep rowing anyway. You wake to shadows stretching long across cold stone, no glint of armor, no bright sun on waves. This is not the land of heroes. This is something older, something heavier. You're walking now through a cursed house, a palace lined with gold, but steeped in blood. The air itself tastes like betrayal. This is the story of the house of Atreus, and you can feel already this one won't end well. It begins, as all terrible things do, with a choice. The gods have finished their first great war, the Titanomachy, and begin to divide up the spoils. Mortals worship, kings rise, and among them is Tantalus, a man loved by the gods, loved until he tests the limits. Invited to dine with Olympus itself, he decides to test the gods' omniscience. He serves them a stew made not from goat, not from lamb, but from his own son, Pelops. A twisted test, a grotesque experiment. The gods recoil in horror. except for Demeter, who, distracted by grief, eats part of the boy's shoulder. Zeus restores Pelops to life, replacing the missing piece with ivory. But Tantalus is cursed. He's banished to the underworld, placed in a pool of water that retreats when he reaches for it, under a tree whose fruit withdraws just out of reach. Tantalized forever, his name etched into language itself. Pelops survives, but the curse doesn't die with his father, it just mutates. Pelops becomes a great king, marries Hippodamia, after winning a chariot race by bribing the charioteer to sabotage the opposing team. That charioteer? Myrtilus, who's then killed by Pelops to keep the secret. With his dying breath, Myrtilus curses him. A second curse, layered on top of the first. You're probably wondering when we meet Atreus. Hold tight. Pelops and Hippodamia have two sons, Atreus and Thyestes. And this is where the spiral begins. They fight over a throne. Thyestes seduces Atreus' wife. Atreus finds out and invites him to a reconciliatory feast. You tense up. You've heard this beat before. Atreus serves Thyestes a meal made from the flesh of his own sons. Yes, again. Another feast soaked in blood. Thyestes eats, laughs, drinks. Then Atreus reveals the truth. Thyestes screams, curses his brother, and flees. But the curse doesn't stop there. It sinks deeper into the bloodline, like venom in a well. Years later, Thyestes has a son with his own daughter, a child born for vengeance. His name is Aegisthus. He'll matter soon. But first, Atreus has sons of his own, Agamemnon and Menelaus. You recognize them. They're the kings from the Trojan War, the ones who sail to reclaim Helen. But before that war, there's another horror. The winds won't blow. The Greek fleet is trapped. Agamemnon consults the oracle and learns he has angered Artemis. The price? Sacrifice his daughter Iphigenia. He does it. The wind returns. They sail. But when Agamemnon returns 10 years later, triumphant from Troy, he finds his home changed. Because Clytemnestra, his wife and Iphigenia's mother, has been waiting for a decade, with a knife and a lover, Aegisthus, son of Thyestes. See how the threads tighten? Agamemnon walks into the palace. Clytemnestra greets him with warmth, then traps him in the bath and murders him with an axe. No trick, no seduction, just vengeance delivered cold. The chorus of the house weeps, not because they're surprised, but because they knew it would come to this. But even that isn't the end. Agamemnon's son, Orestes, returns. He's grown now, haunted, torn. He knows what happened, and according to the ancient law, he must avenge his father, even if it means killing his own mother. He hesitates, then acts. Clytemnestra dies by his hand, so does Aegisthus. And Orestes, he collapses under the weight of his choice. Because vengeance, in the old world, isn't clean. The Furies rise. They are older than the gods, born from the blood of Uranus, the first sky god. They pursue Orestes, relentless, hissing justice through cracked teeth. They are not impressed by divine lineage or noble excuses. He killed his mother. That is all they need. He flees to Athens, to the temple of Athena, begging for mercy. And here, finally, comes something new. Athena doesn't pass judgment alone. She creates the first jury. 12 mortals, a trial, a vote. Half vote for guilt, half for innocence. Athena casts the deciding vote, mercy. The Furies, appeased, are transformed into the Eumenides, the kindly ones, guardians of justice rather than vengeance. It's the mythic origin of the legal system, the moment where justice begins to evolve from blood for blood to something higher. Historians still debate whether this shift from vengeance to trial reflects the real transformation of early Greek society, from tribal retaliation to civic law. But standing here in the ruins of this blood-soaked house, you feel it. The aching desire to stop the spiral, to lay the curse to rest, to let the next generation be more than the sins they inherited. You walk through the echoing halls, past the ghost of Iphigenia, the shadow of Clytemnestra, the silent scream of Thyestes, and you wonder, what would you have done? Would you have broken the chain? Or tightened it? The house is quiet now. The blood is dry. But the curse, it lingers. In stories, in memory, in the way we carry what we weren't meant to hold. And yet, Orestes lives. Scarred, marked, but alive. Not as a hero, not as a villain. Just a man who dared to ask, can it end with me? You lie down in the ruined courtyard, watching vines grow through cracks in marble. and for a moment you imagine that maybe, even here, something new could grow. The night is quiet now, the air soft around your ears. You shift in your sleep and begin to feel it. Not a breeze, not a storm, but a presence, like fire or rage or resistance just beneath the skin of myth. You open your eyes and realize you're not in the company of kings or heroes anymore. You're in the company of women. And they are not smiling. Because in this part of the story, the women don't wait to be rescued. They don't play the background. They don't ask for permission. These are the women who break the rules, who burn the scripts, who dare to speak in stories written by men. And they begin, of course, with Medea. You've met her already. You remember her on the deck of the Argo, hair snapping like flame, eyes full of betrayal. But you haven't seen her after Jason, after Corinth, after she murders the king and princess with that cursed dress and crown and takes the lives of her own children. Why? Because Jason humiliated her, replaced her, made her disposable, and she decided, if you're going to take everything from me, then I will burn it first. It's horrifying, it's devastating, it's hard to justify. But she escapes, in a chariot pulled by dragons, and becomes something else entirely. Not just a woman scorned, a symbol, a goddess of revenge, a shadow cast across centuries. You move now from her fire-lit memory to a palace, heavy with silence, and there stands Clytemnestra, the queen of Mycenae, the wife of Agamemnon, the mother of Iphigenia. When her husband kills their daughter to sail to Troy, something inside her breaks and does not heal. She waits 10 years. And when he returns, she welcomes him with honeyed words and a crimson cloak that pools like blood. She leads him to the bath. She lifts the axe, and she ends him. No hesitation. Clytemnestra is not subtle. She doesn't ask forgiveness. She rules in his place for nearly a decade, with her lover Aegisthus at her side, until Orestes, her son, avenges his father. But until that moment, she holds power, and you feel it in your chest. This fury, this presence. She's not kind, but she is exact. Her voice is the echo in every room that once demanded silence. You walk onward, to a tower, to a woman standing alone on the city walls of Troy, watching her future go up in flames. Cassandra, the cursed prophetess, the one given the gift of foresight by Apollo, then cursed when she refused him. He made it so no one would ever believe her. So when she cries, "Do not bring the horse inside," they laugh. When she warns of slaughter, they scoff. When she screams as Agamemnon brings her back to Mycenae as a war prize, as she sees his blood spilling in the bath, no one listens. And still, she speaks. She keeps speaking. That's her punishment. Not madness, not silence, but the knowledge that no one will ever hear her truth. A quirky but chilling note. Ancient dramatists often dressed Cassandra in rags, even as a princess, to show the disconnect between her royalty and the way she was treated. Symbol and symptom. You pause at the threshold of her temple and leave a whisper behind. I believe you. Then you descend. Down. Down into a forest. A place with no thrones, no oaths, no gods. And you meet Atalanta. Not a queen, not a prophetess, a hunter, raised by bears in the wilderness, faster than any man. Sharper with a bow than Artemis herself. The only woman to sail with the Argonauts, the first to draw blood in the Caledonian boar hunt, and the one who swore never to marry unless a man could outrun her. Many tried, many failed, until Hippomenes. With help from Aphrodite, he drops golden apples during the race. Atalanta, curious, slows to pick them up. He wins, marries her, but forgets to thank the goddess who helped him. So they are both cursed. In some versions, they're transformed into lions. In others, consumed by their own passion in a sacred temple, punished for defiling what they did not understand. Atalanta's story doesn't end in glory or vengeance. It ends in warning that even the freest woman can be caught, but only by distraction, never by force. You climb again, returning to the temples of Athens, where you meet Antigone. She is not a daughter of the gods, just a daughter of Oedipus. Her story is tragedy baked into the bones. 2 brothers, dead in battle, one buried with honor, the other left to rot by royal decree. Antigone refuses. She buries him, openly, boldly, defying her uncle Creon the king. He sentences her to death, and she goes willingly, choosing the underworld over injustice, choosing silence on her terms. Historians still argue whether Antigone is a feminist icon or a martyr of principle, whether her strength lies in rebellion or restraint. You only know this: she does not flinch. She looks the law in the eye and says, "You are wrong." You sit now at the edge of a well, where women once gathered to draw water and whisper. And you realize something. In a world where men were gods and kings and heroes, the women were the reckoning. They were the ones who refused to forget, who cursed, who killed, who kept going. Not because they were monsters, but because no one else would carry the truth. Even now, their stories resist neat endings. They echo, not in triumph, but in fire, in prophecy, in blood, and in you. You wake up underground, not buried, not trapped, just under. The world above feels distant, muffled, like it's wrapped in fog and old wool. The air here is cold, dry, and smells like stone that remembers every footstep. No birds, no light, just the low hush of stillness that can only mean one thing. You've arrived in the Greek underworld. Forget the flaming pits and pitchforks. That's someone else's mythology. Down here, things are quieter, stranger, somehow more final. You stand at the edge of the river Styx, the great boundary between the world of the living and the dead. The water isn't dark, it's colorless, so still it looks like glass stretched to infinity. And then you see him, Charon, the ferryman. Long robes, eyes like two faint embers, one hand out, the other gripping the pole that steers his shadowy boat. He doesn't speak, he just waits, because without a coin, there is no passage. Ancient Greeks buried their dead with obols, small coins, placed on the tongue or the eyes, payment for the ferryman. No coin, you wander the shores for eternity, not tortured, not chased, just forgotten. You step into the boat. It doesn't rock, it simply begins to move, like the river is pulling it forward with a sigh. The other shore emerges, not as a place, but as a mood, a weight settling on your shoulders. This is the land of Hades, not hell, just after. Ruled by the god of the same name, Hades, brother of Zeus and Poseidon. When the three brothers divided the cosmos, Zeus took the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades drew the short straw, the underworld. But he didn't sulk. He built a kingdom. Structured, detailed, with clear boundaries, the ultimate bureaucracy of death. You walk the asphodel fields where most souls drift, not punished, not rewarded, just existing. They shuffle through tall, pale grasses, murmuring to no one. This is where ordinary souls go, people who lived neither heroically nor wickedly, which, let's be honest, is most of us. You pass by judges of the dead, Minos, Rhadamanthus, Aeacus, deciding the fate of souls. Their robes shimmer faintly, like they're woven from moonlight and laws. And then there's Elysium, the paradise of heroes. Imagine the softest breeze, golden fields, and endless feasts. Where Achilles lounges with Patroclus, where Orpheus strums his lyre in the corner of eternity. But even here, it's quiet. Pleasant, yes, but still distant. Even the reward feels like an echo of joy, not the thing itself. At the opposite end lies Tartarus. This is not for mortals. This is where the gods throw the titans, where Sisyphus pushes his rock, where Tantalus reaches for fruit that never comes. It's deep, silent, reserved for the truly cursed. And somewhere in between there's the Lethe, the river of forgetting. Souls destined for rebirth drink from it, letting go of their past lives, erasing memory to begin again. And suddenly you wonder, if you stood before it, would you drink? Would you erase the grief, the regret, the weight of everything that came before? Or would you hold on, even to pain, because it made you who you are? Quirky note: the Lethe has a sister river, the Mnemosyne, the river of memory. Some mystic traditions claim that true seekers should drink from it instead, to remember everything. A choice: forget and start over, or remember and awaken. You walk farther and find Cerberus, the three-headed dog, guarding the gates. He doesn't bark, doesn't chase, he just watches, each head turning slightly in sync, like he's measuring your soul. Past him, the underworld opens wider than you expected. You see Persephone again, no longer the frightened girl in the meadow. She stands beside Hades now, queen of this realm. She doesn't smile, but she sees you, and for a moment, the dead are still. This is not a place of fire and brimstone. It's a place of consequence. Here, there are no lies, no masks, just the shape of who you were. And yet the underworld isn't entirely cruel. You hear the tale of Orpheus, who came down once before you, lyre in hand, to bring back his love, Eurydice. His music moved even Hades, even Persephone. They gave him a condition: don't look back. Trust. He almost made it. Almost. He climbed all the way back to the surface, the light beginning to glow on his face, and at the last second, he turned. She vanished. Forever. Historians still debate whether Orpheus's failure was doubt or love so strong it couldn't wait one more moment to be sure. You keep walking, passing shades, souls without shadow, whispering names that no longer belong to them. You feel their memories trail like mist behind them. Regrets, moments they wish they could take back, words they never said. But also, laughter. You hear it faintly in the distance, yes, even here. Because memory doesn't die, and neither does love. You come to a grove of trees with silver leaves and roots that pulse faintly, like heartbeats in the soil. This is where the philosophers gather. The ones who asked too many questions, who wondered what happens next. They're still talking, still theorizing. You smile. Even death hasn't quieted them. And finally you sit, in the center of it all, and you realize this place is not designed to punish or reward. It's designed to reflect. Who were you? What did you value? Who did you protect? Who did you hurt? The underworld asks no questions aloud. It simply waits for you to ask them yourself. You lie back, eyes closed, breath steady. Not because you're dead, but because sometimes to truly live, you have to understand what waits beneath it all. And you do. You stir gently from the hush of the underworld, as though waking from a long, thoughtful dream. The air feels thinner now, lighter. Like the weight of all those shadows has finally begun to lift. You blink, and when you open your eyes again, the world has changed. Gone are the roaring heroes and thunder-wielding gods. The myths feel quieter now, fainter, like stories heard in childhood that once seemed impossibly large, but now seem more like metaphors than history. You're watching from a hillside above the Aegean. The temple ruins below you are cracked and sun-bleached. Olive trees sway, cicadas hum, and all around you is the echo of a world moving forward. Because this is the twilight of the gods, not Ragnarok style. No apocalypse here, just a slow fading, like stars at dawn. The age of myth is ending, not with fire, but with forgetfulness. The Olympians still exist, of course up there on their cloud-shrouded mountain, but they're quieter now, more distant. Their temples fall into ruin, their altars gather dust. Mortals stop leaving honey cakes, stop whispering prayers into amphory, stop naming their daughters after goddesses and their sons after conquerors. You ask yourself, where did they go? And the answer is strange. They went nowhere. They simply became symbols. Zeus is no longer the sky god who throws thunderbolts when you lie. He's the face of raw authority, of stormy power, of the danger in unchecked control. Hera becomes not a jealous queen, but the reminder that loyalty, once betrayed, can calcify into vengeance. Athena lingers in law books and chess games, and the resolve of every woman who refuses to be underestimated. Aphrodite lives in perfume bottles, in glances across crowded rooms, in the ache that blooms in your chest when love feels just out of reach. They live through us, not above us. Historians and philosophers began to reshape the stories, piece by piece. In the Golden Age of Athens, men like Plato and Aristotle began to seek truths not from Olympus, but from reason, from debate, from observation. The gods were still referenced, of course, but more like metaphors, allegories. And then came Rome. They didn't destroy the myths, they absorbed them. Zeus became Jupiter, Hera became Juno, Ares became Mars, and so on. The names changed, the personalities softened or sharpened depending on the needs of the empire. The stories spread north, east, west, but by then belief had shifted, because the world had changed. New religions rose. The old gods, tied to specific rivers, mountains, and seasons, began to feel small beside the promise of omnipotent deities who spoke of eternal salvation or cosmic justice. Gods who weren't just flawed reflections of us, but who demanded something more, something purer. The Olympians didn't fight this shift. They didn't rage or cry or strike the heavens, they just faded. Some say they transformed into stars, others into symbols. Others still say they left quietly, returning to the sea, the wind, the roots of the mountains that first birthed them. You wander now through a temple to Apollo, columns still tall but cracked, vines curling around the marble. Once people gathered here to sing hymns, to ask for prophecies, to offer gold and goats in praise. Now it's empty. But if you close your eyes, you can almost hear the echo of a lyre, just faintly. Just enough to remind you that once the world was different, not simpler, just closer to magic. And the myths, they survived, not in offerings or oaths, but in stories, passed from tongue to tongue, from parent to child, from papyrus to parchment to page, and eventually into film, into comics, into novels and museums and tattoos on forearms. You realize now, immortality was never about power. It was about memory. The gods are immortal because we remember them, even now, even here. Because there's something in us that still needs them. Not the thunder, not the wrath, but the stories. The girl who was punished for being beautiful. The man who wandered for decades to find his way home. The warrior who wept. The queen who ruled. The mother who grieved. The boy who dared to fly too close to the sun. The myths taught us that the divine was flawed, that pain was part of the journey, that glory was fleeting, and choices had consequences. They didn't offer easy answers. They offered mirrors. And even in their fading, they gave us one final gift, ourselves. Because when the gods vanished from the skies, we were forced to look inward, to become our own heroes, to carry the weight of our own choices, to forge meaning in a world without Olympus. And yet you still hear them, don't you? Not as voices from on high, but as that whisper in your gut when you stand at a crossroads, when you hesitate before a truth, when you feel love so deep it feels dangerous, when you face the unknown and still step forward. That's where they live now. In the quiet, unrecorded bravery of human life, in the patterns we repeat, in the stories we rewrite. You lie down on the cool stone, the sun slipping behind the hills, and let the last light spill across your skin like a blessing, or maybe a goodbye. The gods are gone, but the myths, they're still breathing, right here, inside you. The light is dim now, dusk turning to night, the edges of the world softening into silhouettes. You're still lying there among the broken columns and whispering olive branches, but something has shifted. The myths are behind you, the journey complete. But instead of relief, you feel a strange weightlessness, as if something profound has been loosened, not just in the heavens, but in you. And here in this quiet, we reflect. You think back to chaos, the beginning of everything. That first breath of existence that cracked the dark open like an egg. You remember how the gods were born not with ceremony but with struggle. How power was never given but seized, often through betrayal, through pain. You remember Cronus eating his children, Zeus casting his father down. You remember the Titanomachy, the age of storm and rebellion. The gods who rose from the ashes, flawed and magnificent and loud. You remember Prometheus, bound to a rock for daring to care about humanity. The fire he gave us still burns in your bones. You remember Pandora, opening her jar, unleashing everything dark and terrible, but also, inexplicably, hope. You recall the ages of man, the golden days lost, the Bronze Age blood-soaked and roaring, the heroic age so bright and brief, and finally the Iron, the one we're still in, where toil is endless and the gods are silent. But there was always a thread pulled by someone determined enough to follow it. That thread led you through labyrinths, through underworlds, through forests and oceans in flame, through quests, betrayals, sacrifices. You followed Theseus, you sailed with Jason, you listened to Orpheus, cried for Eurydice, ached with Odysseus as he longed for Ithaca, drifted with him across years and oceans of loss. You saw heroes rise and fall, not because they were gods, but because they were stubborn. Because they were human enough to fight back, even when they knew they would lose. You met Medea, furious and fiery and unforgivable. You watched Clytemnestra lift the axe and dare to call it justice. You heard Cassandra scream warnings into a world that never listened. And you began to wonder, not just what the myths meant, but why they were told at all. Because these aren't just stories about gods, they're maps of the human experience. Every one of them is a mirror. Tilted, cracked, but honest. They show you what power does to the powerful, how love mutates into obsession, how revenge never ends, how grief transforms, how women survive, how men fall, how memory refuses to die even when bodies do. They show you that every act has a cost, that fate is both a cage and a compass, and still that mortals have agency. That sometimes the curse stops because someone chooses differently. Like Orestes, begging for trial instead of blood. Like Penelope, weaving her grief into defiance, thread by thread. Like Antigone, burying her brother because law without love is not justice. You realize now that the Greek gods were never about perfection. They were never meant to be worshipped the way later deities were. They were reflections of hunger, of wrath, of desire, of flaw. They sat atop Olympus not to rule, but to remind us that even the sky is not above consequence. And now that the myths have quieted, you wonder where that leaves you. You've walked through every room of this ancient house, from the glowing halls of Olympus to the dust of Troy to the stone-slick banks of the Styx. You've heard the laughter of gods and the sobs of mortals and the screaming silence in between. And what have you learned? That stories are survival. That meaning is something we make, not inherit. That even when the gods fade, the myths endure, because they carry the questions we still don't have answers to. Why do we love what destroys us? Why do we destroy what we love? What is worth sacrificing? Who are we when no one believes us? What do we do with our grief? These are the things mythology never stops asking, and maybe that's the point. Because in the end, the gods didn't leave us behind. They just stepped aside, so we could become the story. And now as the final stars come out, bright and watchful like the eyes of old titans, you feel that thread again, not in your hand, but inside you, pulling, inviting, not to repeat the myths, but to live your own. And now, the journey ends. Let your shoulders drop, let your breath slow. You're far from Olympus now, far from labyrinths and shipwrecks and oracles and dragons. You're just here, in the stillness of night. And maybe as you rest, you realize the myths weren't meant to be understood in the bright light of day. They were meant to whisper to us like this, in the quiet, when the world is asleep and our hearts are still open. The gods were loud. But the truth? It's always quiet. It's in the way we mourn, the way we forgive, the way we start over. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, let the echoes of those old stories settle gently inside you. Let the golden fleece soften into a blanket. Let the sirens hum you to rest. Let Persephone's garden bloom behind your eyelids. You've wandered long enough. You've earned your rest. And if you dream tonight of gods and monsters, of heroes who failed and still rose again, of seas that never end and stars that never lie, remember, it was never about the ending. It was always about the journey. Now sleep, gentle soul. The myths will keep watch, just as they always have.